What's the question? Do you know what it is? When are we going to go back to normal? That's the question of the year, right? We're all wanting to know. I want to go back to normal. I want to go back to being able to shake your hands. I want to be able to give you a hug if you want a hug. I want to be able to go to a baseball game. I know we're sort of starting to do this, but most of all, I want to be able to go to a Coldplay concert again. It's a spiritual experience for me. It really is. I'm sick of having to wear a mask. I'm sick of driving to the store, getting out, going to the door, forgetting the mask and having to walk all the way back. I don't know, but I don't know if I'm losing my mind, but I do that a lot. Maybe you don't, but I just wonder where you're at. And I can't wait to get back to normal. Sort of. Actually, there are some ways that I don't want to go back to normal. Let me share with you. What do I mean by that? So, I don't know about you, but during this period of COVID, I have had to quarantine 2.5 times. I'll let you figure out what the half time was. But I had to quarantine 2.5. I don't know, maybe you had to do more. Some of you may have had to do more. And I got to tell you that by the end of that last time, I was starting to get a little depressed. It had brought me to my knees, as things tend to do when we get to our rope's end. And, but I'd been down this road before with tribulations in my life. And I have learned to trust just a little bit that God can do something even with pain. He can transform it. And so I was somewhat open, and so I called somebody about how I was feeling. And you know what they told me? Call more people. You see, I wasn't as connected as I thought I was. And I didn't know my life could be so much better, God forbid, if I started calling people, more people. I reconnected with a friend from a long time ago, and I missed those days of being with him. And now I'm a friend of his once again. And of all things, in this time of social distancing, honest to God, I have never been so connected in my life. My life has never been better. Don't get me wrong, I still want things to go back, some things to go back. But I got to tell you, if somebody said, I wish we just go back to before, I would honestly say no, to some degree. I don't want anybody to get hurt, by no means, and all that. By no means. But there's some things I don't want to go back to, and I got to tell you, I definitely won't go back to. I have more friends in my life than I've ever had in my life. You see, that's what God does. We hear the stories of Jesus' resurrection, and hopefully we're remembering the different stories. One of the stories, my favorite story, we won't hear it this year. It's in year B. We're in year B, and it's in a different year. One of my favorite stories is the Emmaus story. You know the Emmaus story? That's the story that when Jesus was crucified, these two guys thought it was over, and they left town. They went back to their normal lives. And then also the other stories of the disciples being locked up in the room, scared to death. But they experienced something new, didn't they? They experienced the risen Christ. The two men on the road, Jesus came up to them. And they were surprised to find out something different than the ordinary story of living and dying. They had missed the piece to the puzzle that Jesus was finally revealing to everybody, the truth. It's not just living and dying, it's rising too. And he showed up to those people locked in the room. And those people locked in the room, and those people going the wrong direction, being the most fearful people, went on to become the most fearless people. I can't know in my life how these people became fearless in their life if they hadn't seen Jesus rise. If they were making up a story, which some people think they would never have the courage. It's like, oh guys, we really know we're making this up, but let's pretend. Oh yeah, let's go out and risk our life. They had witnessed the resurrection in their life. And if you ask them after all that if they wanted to go back to normal, they would tell you no way. If Jesus came and you said, don't you want to go back to when you were living? Jesus would say, no way. People always think things are getting worse, especially in our country. We believe it. So many people. But I got to tell you, that is not Christian. Christians are not cynics. They have a well-founded hope because they know the pattern of the universe. Do you know the pattern of the universe? You know what? Once I start to tell you and explain this, you will say, you'll be like amnesia, and you'll say, yeah, of course. That's how the truth is. We're like amnesia, and then we hear the truth and we say, oh, of course. We have a well-founded hope because we know the pattern of the universe. Pay attention. Listen to this. It's so obvious. The pattern of the universe is Christ. All were created in him, through him. All are fed in him. And what is that pattern? Living, dying, and rising. Look at the universe. Look at the stars. The early stars were born. They grew, and then they died. Bad news. We assume the worst. Out of those stars came their gases, and they coalesced and formed new stars. They were born again to new life, to the resurrection, and a greater life. Because you know what? Without those early stars, we would not have the complex elements that we have. We only had the basic elements of hydrogen and helium. But because of those stars dying, such complex elements of carbon, what kind of life form are we? We are carbon life forms. You see that? God not only takes life, but he improves on it through death. Look at the seasons. Look at the seasons. Summer, living. Fall and winter, dying. Spring, the resurrection. New life. That pattern repeats again and again. Look at the caterpillar that dies and becomes a butterfly. Look at the water bug that becomes a butterfly. Did I say water bug? Look at the water bug that dies and becomes the dragonfly. Look at history. Check out history. What's going on in history? The development of our history. Without the death of Greece, there would have been no Rome. No Rome. Without the death of Rome, there would be no Western world, no democracy. You see, God takes death and he improves on it. It's not a resuscitation, but a resurrection. And then the greatest thing of all, the most obvious thing, the church. Jesus, who died and now lives in eternity, has risen in his life, do you think he'd want to go back to his old way of living? No. Look at the church, a bunch of misfits who couldn't do anything, who were scared out of their mind. And they went on to what I believe to become the greatest community in the world. You know what, though? We have to be willing to die to rise. You know, somebody said, you know, Father Chris, we're doing this retreat, and we're going to do the resurrection. We're just going to focus on the resurrection, Father Chris. We want you to give a talk, and we want you to focus on the resurrection. And let's not talk about all that death and dying stuff. So I said, okay, well, let's try and talk about the resurrection. Okay, I sat there and I worked on it, and you know what happened? You can't talk about the resurrection without dying. It's just not real without it. We have to be willing to die to ourselves, and we have to be willing to die now. There is two churches in this world. Which one do you belong to? Do you belong to churchianity, or do you belong in Christianity? Churchianity are people who come to church to avoid hell, to avoid eternal fire. That's why they come. They come for later. Fire insurance. Just in case. Right? But as Christians, we believe in the resurrection now. That it is alive and it happens now. Enter through the narrow gate. Churchianity, it's legion. They don't know about it. They're the walking dead. They've never tried it. They think they're living Christian lives, but they're not. They're the ones who look straight ahead and won't welcome the person into their pew. Because they don't get it. We have to be willing to die to ourselves. Experience it. Sometimes, I'm not saying, sometimes it gets worse before it gets better. I'm not saying that it doesn't get worse sometimes. We have to be willing to die to ourselves. We have to let ourselves go so that we can become something greater, Christ. We have to die to yourself. Will never die to your selfishness. We'll always want to be selfish. But if you die, if you share your life will be better. You will know a greater joy if you really share and open up your fist, your clenched fist, and share. You know joy. Sometimes, you might find that one time where you shared your life and you were rejected. You know, it's funny. People will focus on that one thing and forget about the 10 billion times that you shared and the joy that you had about it. You kids, in your family. We want what we want in our family. We don't want to die to ourselves. But if we give to our family, we have a greater family, greater relationships. Myself doesn't want to forgive in my life. But when I don't forgive, I'm bitter. But if I die to myself and I forgive, my life becomes better. I ask you this when it comes to forgiveness. Can you be bitter and happy at the same time? I've done the research and it doesn't work. If I'm unforgiving and bitter, I really can't be happy. You can't do both. But it is when I forgive that I'm free. Not only are those other people free, and we're saying, well, I'm waiting for an apology and then I forgive. No. Forgive now. Do yourself a favor. Let go of that bitterness. Embrace the freedom. Yourself will tell you to never go on a retreat. I know it. I've seen it. Yourself will never go on a retreat. I'm not going on a retreat. I know better. They're a bunch of weirdos. Your self will tell them to shun those people. But I've never met anyone who died and went on a retreat and weren't better off in the end. I know why you won't go on the retreat. It's the big white elephant. You know, every time I talk to you and you say no, they're saying, oh, it's this and that, and I'm just saying to myself, yeah, I know. You're afraid. That's what you are. Put your big boy pants on, your big girl pants on. Go on a retreat. And if you know better and you know it's going to be worse, and you go on a retreat and you're right, come talk to me. Let me know, Father Chris, you were wrong. That retreat made me worse. We want spiritual things in our life, but we're not willing to do spiritual things. We want life more abundantly, but we're not willing to do it because ourself won't do it. We won't die to ourself. We won't die to our selfishness. Yourself will always tell you, don't get help. Figure it out on your own. Don't do it. Don't do it. That's shame. You got to figure it out on yourself. And so we wonder why our lives are crazy. And when we come to me and we're saying, Father, my life is crazy. Well, it's like, have you ever decided to talk to anybody? No. I'm trying to figure it out on your own. If you want more crazy in your life, do it yourself. It works every time. But if you want to improve your life, if you want a new life, get help. Learn something new. You cannot figure it out on your own because you're the one stuck in crazy. If you knew how to do it, you wouldn't be crazy. Right? Enter the narrow gate. That's what Jesus is talking about. Live Christianity, not churchianity. Start coming to church if you haven't been. You want something spiritual. Well, you'll only find it in community, the fullness in the community. In a community that says, we believe in God, and that's where we're going to start. Because that will change the world. Christ. We have to be fed every week. Because I forget. And I need to be reminded. And I'm a person who eats, and I need to continue to eat the Eucharist. There can be a new normal, a better normal. I pray that we go back to things before, and I pray that we take things and learn and go a new way too.